So, Ms. Goldy, what are your plans if you get elected to dealing with this refugee issue that's going on?
Right, so right now, Canada as a whole is looking at two different sets of so-called refugees. Ones that have come here legally through, namely, the government's vetted processes, some of which have come here through the Syrian migrant policy, which Justin Trudeau, of course, campaigned on during the last federal election. The second group are what I would refer to as illegal migrants who are trying to claim asylum seeker status. Sometimes folks like to refer to them as irregular border crossers and irregular migrants. So we really are going to have a two-pronged approach, one to deal with the legals and one to deal with the illegal border crossers. With respect to the legals, Ahmed Hussein recently, our immigration minister, recently put out the fact that Canada is going to be looking to lead the charge with respect to the UN's refugee initiative. That's great. We're compassionate people. We want to make sure that we extend that compassion. However, I'm running on a Toronto first policy. So I was raised on a very, very simple rule growing up, and that's you take care of your own backyard before you look after the world. I think this is commonsensical. I think a lot of people understand this. I come from immigrant background. It is only to reward good behavior and perhaps not necessarily reward poor behaviors, let alone actual law breaking. So first thing I would do is sit down with Ahmed Hussein and Justin Trudeau as soon as I'm elected. And I'm going to say, okay, so when you envision leading the charge for this UN refugee policy and plan, where does Toronto fit in? We know Toronto is a very populated city. We know that we have very limited resources as it is. And right now what we're seeing is that of both the legal and illegal migrants that are coming into our city, if current trends continue, you look at our strange shelter system, we're looking at about 55% of occupants by November will be migrants. That's great if we have all the beds in the world, but unfortunately we don't. I've been down to Toronto's tent city that we have here. I've been to homeless shelters. I actually took a year off of my life to discern a call to the nunnery, if you can believe it. I spent a great deal of that time with the homeless. So I've got a huge piece of real estate in my heart for Toronto's homeless. What I met there were former taxpayers, people who worked at RIM, you'll remember BlackBerry, people who worked with the TDSB, people who have even been armed service military members. Addiction, mental health rears its ugly head, and these guys are kind of out of luck, okay? That's what welfare is for, is to take care of people when they've fallen. Unfortunately, welfare, we can't extend it to all the world's poor, to all the world's needy. It's a nice idea, but it's not realistic. So what we're going to be doing is evacuating all migrants, illegal migrants, from Toronto's shelters, hotels, and motel system. And what we're going to be doing following that is making deals with all of the nearby jurisdictions that have, some of whom have actually come on record and said that they actually want these migrants because their populations are going down, what have you. We're happy to bus them over there. That's not a problem. It'll be a very minimal cost to the taxpayer in comparison to, say, housing them for time indefinite. Now, I'll tell you right now, the pigeons at City Hall, they've always had it out for me. There are a few clips out there of them attacking me. I used to be a City Hall reporter a couple of years ago. So that's Rob Ford glory days. So save the nearby jurisdictions and busing them to there. I'm going to be sitting down with the Prime Minister and letting him know on behalf of all Toronto taxpayers that we were never asked, that his open borders policy, myself as a journalist actually broke that story of the Roxham Road entrance, and that his open borders policy is many things, but most importantly, it's undemocratic. And what he's done thereafter is that he's given them the option of where they want to go. And so what happens, they've all heard of Toronto, so they're all coming here. And it is of disproportionate, undue hardship to the Toronto taxpayer right now, to such a way that we're even edging out our own needy. So I'm going to make sure that Justin Trudeau and I negotiate a deal that works so that he can continue on with his federal mandate and I can continue on with my municipal mandate of putting Toronto first and making it an illegal migrant no-go zone.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but on your campaign side, you said that you would put the refugees in a bus and send them to Justin Trudeau's doorstep.
Right, that's our last case scenario. So in the event that the jurisdictions, they say we're all full, in the event that Justin Trudeau says we don't want to make a deal, which I actually have a tremendous amount of faith that he actually will come to the table and we will be able to negotiate something. But in the event that he and I cannot reach a conclusion, then I will be busing them to the front lawn of the official residence of the Prime Minister.
I spoke to Anthony Fury at Toronto Sun.
Fantastic.
And he said he proposed that Canada should build a wall at Roxham Road. What are your thoughts on that?
Great. Actually, I've looked into the legalities myself as a personal citizen to do it. Regrettably, because of Crown land, private property laws in the States, etc., I couldn't do it myself. So what we would need is a federal initiative. That being said, we have the largest undefended border in the world, okay, with the United States. So Roxham Road today, I've been to other places in southern Manitoba where there's also this illegal backdoor that just continues to revolve throughout the day and night. People just go elsewhere. It's very, very simple. We can create actually a legislative wall. All Justin Trudeau and his open borders obsessed Liberal cabinet ministers have to do is declare the entire border an official port of entry. When they do that, the RCMP men, who are now being treated frankly as bellhops, helping these illegals cross, carrying their bags, etc., they will be replaced with Canadian Border Services agents. They then withhold the right to turn these people away, and then we'll stop the sham of people being detained for less than 24 hours, and then within 30 days put it on a full benefits package, which of course includes our gold-plated health care benefits and socialized services.
And how do you think Mayor John Tory has dealt with this issue?
Oh, he's basically declared Toronto a sanctuary city. I'll tell you something. A couple of weeks ago, I went down to the tent city right by the Gardiner, the one that John Tory keeps on cleaning up so that way no one has to see that eyesore that we have poor people, we have destitute, really vulnerable people in this city, mostly men, young men, middle-aged men from all sorts of ethnic backgrounds, okay? These are guys who, there's help available for them. They've got opioid addictions, they've got drinking addictions, they got no support system, okay? I was down there the day that John Tory got up on his high horse with Minister Bill Blair, the Minister of absolute nothingness, okay? And the guy says, we're going to be bringing $11 million to Toronto so we can bring more and more and more illegals in here. And I went down to the tent city. I said, hey guys, I notice you don't have a TV. You want to hear the news today? They said, yeah, tell us what it is. So I told them, the government is giving $11 million more for shelters. They said, yeah. I said, but it's not going for you. It's going for the illegals. You should have seen their faces. That I would urge John Tory to go down and talk to the people that are being negatively affected, not just the almighty taxpayer, no one has a name or a face to what we're talking about when we say taxpayer. Go down and talk to Mike and Joe and John and Jack down underneath the bridge. Talk to those guys and say, hey, this policy, we want to help other people, but you're not part of our factor. You're not being factored into our equation right now. So what do I think about it? I think it's reckless. I think that we've seen that it's hurt not just taxpayers across the board, but it's also hurt private establishments. We've seen everything from the Plaza Hotel to one of the Radisson hotels been turned upside down because everything from our illegals to our legal migrants, frankly, are not carrying themselves in a way that we would hope people would when so much is being offered to them while we're asking for nothing in return.
Now, why should Canadians be concerned about this in terms of how Mayor John Tory is dealing with this situation right now?
Well, Canadians en masse, it's not just John Tory, right? It's the federal government as well. Why they should be concerned about it, several reasons. First and foremost, from an economic standpoint, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars that are now coming out of our budget. And I'll tell you something right now. Our budget, 70% of it in this city goes to just paying for salaries and benefits. Only 10% of our budget now goes to providing services. Can you imagine if we just took those tens of millions of dollars we're now spending on illegal border crossers and put it towards making our TTC better, paving our roads? How about some summer recreational programs for kids who are off school but mom and dad both have to work 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table, right? There are real ways that we could use this money, even if it means putting the money back into your pocket, right? The other one is a public safety issue. It hurts me to say this, but we saw in recent months that the killer of a little girl, Marissa Shen, a 13-year-old Canadian, beautiful little girl of Chinese heritage out on the West Coast, she was killed. The man behind bars right now is a 28-year-old Syrian migrant. there is a problem. That's something that I discovered through my years of journalism, through access to information requests, etc. There is now a problem with the tens of thousands of legals, the tens of thousands of illegals, when it comes to assimilation. That includes language skills, that includes employment ability, and now we're seeing just simple things like Canadian values, simple things like you don't touch little girls in swimming pools like we saw in the Edmonton mall over there. You don't hurt little girls when they're out at a playground at the end of the day like we saw with little Marissa Shen. So my goal is not to stand up on the graves and be a political opportunist about these girls. I got a mama bear instinct. My goal is to make sure that no other child is ever hurt and that no compassionate Canadian is taken for a fool.
Now, Gotham Nath, one of the mayoral candidates, said that his plan in dealing with the refugee resettlement is to take the refugees and take them to other provinces rather than Ontario. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, I love his campaign. That seems like a good guy, to be honest. I actually would like to sit down with him one time. I mean, we'll bring them to wherever makes the most amount of sense when it comes to the authorities, who I would hope are actually representing their constituents, and also to Toronto taxpayers as well. If we can get them somewhere by bus, why would we pay for an airplane? So we want to make sure that it's a sensible rollout. But I'm not excluding Nath's idea. I am actually quite interested in that.
Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This is great. You're a brilliant interviewer. Thank you, my friend.
We'll do